Well, good morning, everybody. I'd like to call to order this Rules and Operations Committee of the Pierce County Council here on March 20th, 2023. The time's approximately 10:01 a.m. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Councilmember Campbell.
Here.
Councilmember Morrell.
Here.
Councilmember Mello.
Here.
You have 3 members present.
Thank you. We have 3 members present and a quorum of the Rules Committee. We also have every other member of council here to
Critique our work.
oversee the work of the Rules and Operations Committee this morning, which we are grateful for. Item number 3, approval of the agenda. Is there any objection to our published agenda? Not seeing any. The agenda is approved. Item 4, there are no minutes to approve today, so we'll skip that with no objection. Item 5, approval of the meeting schedule for the week of March 27th through 31. Ms. Long, to brief the committee.
Thank you and good morning. This is a meeting scheduled for March 27th through the 31st. On Monday, the 27th at 10 a.m., you have your Rules and Operations Committee meeting. You'll be approving the meeting schedule for the week of April 3rd through the 7th and the council agenda for April 4th. There are 2 proposals on this agenda. First up is our 2023-24, and this is authorizing the executive to enter into an interlocal agreement between Pierce County Flood Control Zone District and the county, accepting economic stimulus grant for construction of Horsehaven Creek Culvert Replacement Project. And this has an April 4th final hearing date. Next is our 2023-27, and this is approving a change in the legal name and corporate name of Pierce County Fire Protection District Number 21 to Graham Fire and Rescue. And this has an April 11th final hearing date. At 11 a.m. on Monday, you have your regular Monday study session, and I'm seeing the usual agenda here, no additions at this point. At 1:30 is a Public Safety Committee meeting, and the only action item is an executive session on this agenda, and that's it for that. Moving to Tuesday, March 28th at 9:30, you have an Economic and Infrastructure Development Committee meeting. There is 1 proposal, and there are 2 presentations or discussion items. The proposal is 2023-9, and this is the Comcast cable franchise. This has a May 9th final hearing date. Next is a discussion of the active transportation policy framework, and this will be with Planning and Public Works staff. And next is the Vision Zero Action Plan update, also with Planning and Public Works. And at noon is your regular Tuesday study session. Again, I'm seeing the usual agenda here, no additions. And at 3 p.m. is your regular council meeting. And that is the meeting scheduled for March 27th through the 31st, excuse me.
Thank you, Ms. Long. Are there questions by Rules members on the meeting schedule for March the 27th? Or anyone else? Not seeing any. Vice Chair Campbell for a motion.
Thank you, Chair. I move that we approve the meeting schedule for the week of March 27th through the 31st, 2023.
Second. It's been properly moved and seconded to adopt the meeting schedule of the week of March 27th to 31, 2023. Councilmember Morrell.
I just wanted to clarify, in public safety, there's an executive session? Okay, just haven't seen that, so.
Yeah. They don't often occur in committees, but they can.
Okay.
I'm sure the chair of the Public Safety Committee can help share more in private, appropriately in private, as to the purpose of the executive session. So if anyone wants to talk to Chair Herrera on that, please do. It's appropriately noticed as a private executive session to protect the public interest and public safety matters.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Cruver.
Thank you, Chair. Are members allowed to attend those exec meetings when they're not on the committee?
That would be really up to the committee itself.
Okay. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for the question. Seeing no other questions, the motion in front of us is adoption of the motion to approve the meeting schedule for the week of March 27 through 31, 2023. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The motion is adopted. Item number 6 is approval of the council agenda for March 28th, 2023. Ms. Long to brief the committee.
Thank you. This is your March 28th regular council meeting agenda. At this time, there is one item on your consent agenda, and that's under subsection C. This is R 2023-32. This is for introduction. This is a resolution setting the date of the evening District Number 1 council meeting, and that will be for Wednesday, May 3rd at 6 p.m. at the White River High School Library, and this has an April 4th final hearing date. Moving down to section 7, you have 2 proclamations on this agenda. First is R 2023-30, and this is recognizing the inherent rights of the Southern resident orcas in Pierce County, Washington. And the second is our 2023-31. This is honoring Vietnam veterans and proclaiming March 29th as Vietnam Veterans Day in Pierce County. Moving to Section 8 ordinances, you have one item here. It's 2023-7. And this is restating and modifying the Pierce County Small Business Innovation Matching Grant Program. This received a due pass at EIDC on March 14th. Under Section 9, resolutions, you have one item as well. That's R 2023-25, and this is amending some previously adopted resolutions of the council. This is related to the council's Standing and Select Committee. And this was forwarded without recommendation at rules on March 13th. And those are your agenda items for March 28th.
Mr. Campbell.
Thank you, Chair. Looking at the proclamation, section 7 there, thinking it might be best if we actually switch the order of those. I think we may, I would like to make sure that we're honoring the veterans first and foremost when we're looking at that, and that way if we have extended public comment, we're not holding up on that. Are there any objections to flipping that order?
No objection from me. Ms. Long, if you could
We will
just flip
flip
the orders
those.
of 1 and 2 in the proclamation section, please.
Yep, we will do that. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Long, if you could have the clerk staff, I know you're waiting for the final action on setting Councilmember Morell's in-district meeting, but if we could get that as a FYI on our calendars to at least hold the time.
Yes,
so that
absolutely.
we don't get overbooked. And if it changes, it changes, but I suspect it won't. Thank you, Councilmember Morell, for being on top of setting your in-district meeting and getting those kicked off. Vice Chair Campbell for a motion.
I move approval of the council agenda for March 28th, 2023 with aforementioned corrections.
It's been properly moved and seconded to approve the council agenda for March 28th, 2023 with the aforementioned changes. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Sorry about that. The motion was adopted to approve the council agenda for March 28th, 2023. We have proposal number R 2022-163 in front of us. Councilmember Morell for a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move proposal number R 2022-1.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded to adopt proposal number R 2022-163. Madam Clerk, will you please read into the record?
Thank you. Proposal number R 2022-163, a resolution of the Pierce County Council authorizing the release of funding
For a microhome village project pursuant to provisos to the 2022-2023 Pierce County biennial budget.
Ms. Face, what microphone do you have? Do you know? Okay, I think we're good. Ms. Merrick, to brief the committee.
Thank you, Chair Mello, members of the committee. For the record, Lee Beth Merrick, council staff. Before you is Resolution R 2022-163, which releases up to $21.55 million in ARPA funding for the development of the Pierce County Village. For some brief background, the most recent biennial budget appropriated $22.3 million of ARPA funding for a microhome village or village projects serving chronically homeless residents in Pierce County. The council required the executive to submit a proposal before the funding is released. The executive did submit this proposal in October of last year, which detailed a plan to build 285 microhomes on an 85-acre site off of Spanaway Loop Road with the Tacoma Rescue Mission as the operator. After reviewing the proposal, the council adopted Resolution R 2022-174, which requested additional information from the executive about the proposed site, including environmental impacts, review appraisal, and a review of the real estate transaction by the prosecutor's office. It directed them to identify at least 2 other potential sites for the village, and it requested additional details about Tacoma Rescue Mission's operating and capital budgets, their resident admission criteria, and details about their plan for using community volunteers. The resolution also requested that the Comprehensive Plan to End Homelessness Implementation Advisory Board provide its feedback about the village proposal and the additional information requested by the resolution. The executive submitted their response to the resolution to council on March 1st, and they also presented during last Monday's study session. You also received information from the Comprehensive Plan to End Homelessness Advisory Board about their feedback for the plan. In the budget ordinance, it does state that if the council does not authorize releasing the funds for the village by March 31st, 2023, then the council may authorize the funds to be allocated to other projects serving chronically homeless residents in Pierce County. So under the resolution before you, up to $21,550,000 is released for the Pierce County Village project. There is no other fiscal impact, and I think with that, we're happy to answer any questions. We will let you know that there is one amendment available.
Thank you, Ms. Merrick. Questions for Ms. Merrick before we consider committee amendment number 1 this morning? Ms. Merrick, sorry, if you don't know this answer, you can follow up, but just for those maybe listening, we're talking about releasing 22 point.
So at this point, I think there's $21,550,000 remaining. So the budget appropriated $22.3 million, but I think $750,000 of that has been used just on getting the site evaluated, the proposal developed.
And sorry if you don't have this at your fingertips. I think the question that I'm trying to get on the record here is, that's the county, the Pierce County portion of the planned investment. What's the total number of the investment at full build-out of this village? Do you recall?
Let me double check the proposal for.
Councilmember Morel, you might have that.
I think it's 150.
About 150 million. Just wanted to put it in context about the scale of the project and other funds. Sorry for not preparing you for that. Any other questions for Ms. Merrick at this time? Not seeing any. Vice Chair Campbell to move committee amendment number 1.
Move committee amendment number 1 to proposal number R 2022-163.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded to adopt committee amendment number 1 to resolution 2022-163. Mr. Taylor.
Yes, thank you. So good morning. The committee amendment number 1 should be found at starting at page 13 of your electronic packet. I'll just walk through the amendment memo quickly, then answer any questions that you might have. So the amendment memo modifies the resolution authorizing the release of funding for micro home villages and adds a new Exhibit A to the proposal as well. So within the amendment memo, item number 1 specifies a number of modifications to recitals. These modifications to recitals are intended to document the process that has occurred to date. Item number 2 adds new recitals. These new recitals are also intended to document the process to date and provide additional context regarding the micro home village a proposal that the council reviewed. You'll note that these recitals add dates of review by council, for instance. Also added is a recital that's a statement of support for the micro home village concept as a form of permanent supportive housing. Item number 3 modifies a recital to make it clear that the resolution is for the release of funds for micro home villages rather than the approval of a specific project. That's an important distinction to make within the resolution, as that's the effect of the resolution. So that's the item number 3 within the amendment memo. Item number 4, the amendment memo modifies section 1. The modifications include a reference to the 2022-2023 budget ordinance. Also a reference to the proposal that was submitted to the council, the Pierce County Village proposal. The change indicates that the project or projects that are funded with this micro home village funding should be similar, substantially similar to that proposal that the Pierce County Council saw, the Pierce County Village proposal. In addition, Section 1 adds reference to a new Exhibit A, and I'll go through Exhibit A in a moment. Exhibit A provides guidance on the release of funding. Lastly, within item number 4, you'll see a new paragraph added. This paragraph just expresses an intent that the council will monitor the use of the released funds. And as Ms. Merrick noted earlier, states that funding may be reappropriated when necessary to ensure that all funding is utilized within the timeframes that are provided for in the American Rescue Plan Act. Then lastly, item 5 within the amendment memo references the new Exhibit A that's attached. So, Mr. Chair, I can walk through Exhibit A if you'd like.
Please.
Okay. So Exhibit A is titled Micro Home Village Funding Release Requirements. It has 3 components: a component addressing the funding agreement, a component addressing the sequence of funding release, and then a monitoring component. So regarding the funding agreement, this new Exhibit A would state that a funding agreement in a form determined by the Finance Department shall be executed prior to the release of the Micro Home Village project funding. The duty to determine the appropriate form of that agreement is the Finance Department's duty. In addition to, further provides that in addition to any provisions required by the Finance Department to ensure compliance with the law, local, state, and federal, the funding agreement should adhere to or shall adhere to a set of principles. And these are the principles. Item number 1, the funding agreement's to be structured in a manner that recognizes the obligation and expenditure deadlines of the American Rescue Plan Act, does not endanger funding being returned or having to be repaid to the federal government, and ensures the county will obligate the Micro Home Village project funds no later than September 1, 2024, unless otherwise extended by the council. So this principle contemplates a scenario where funding hasn't been obligated by September 1, 2024, and the Finance Department can bring that back to the council for potential extension of that September 1 date. Item number 2 requires that the funding agreement require that the micro home village that receives funding be operated for a minimum of 30 years as permanent affordable housing, primarily serving formerly chronically homeless individuals with incomes at or below 65% of the area median income for Pierce County, the AMI. This requirement is to be secured by deed of trust or other appropriate surety instrument. Item number 3 requires that any micro home village project that receives money be located on real property, which is in a zone classification that permits the shared housing village use. That's the use category that a micro home village would fit within in the county zoning code. This principle also requires that any necessary special use permits required by Pierce County Code be secured by April 1, 2024. If that doesn't occur, that would mandate or cause the review of the agreement to occur by the Finance Department and would potentially cause termination of the funding agreement. And then lastly, the fourth principle requires that the funding agreement and surety include provisions for the recovery of county funding and assets acquired with county funding in the event the village project is terminated by the funding partner, it's unable to proceed due to denial of special use permits, or does not commence site development by August 1, 2024. There is a clause, however, that indicates that should that August 1, 2024 date not be met, the agreement would be reviewed by the Finance Department for possible termination of the funding agreement. So it's not an automatic termination, but it's a point to evaluate status and possible termination if the project's not going to be able to be successful. The funding agreement that's discussed in item A is to be filed with the Office of the Pierce County Council prior to the release of any funding for the Micro Home Village project or projects. Item B speaks to the funding release sequence. So it sets forth a schedule. It indicates that the first funding release would be up to $7 million. It would be available for release by the Finance Department upon ordinance numbers 2022-81S, which is the 0.1% sales tax, and 2023-5S, which is the development regulations modifying the shared housing use type, becoming effective. Item number 2 provides that up to an additional $5 million of funding shall be released or shall be available for release by the Finance Department upon the issuance of all required special use permits and the completion of any associated appeal periods for those permits. Item number 3 indicates the remaining balance of the funding appropriated for micro home villages would be available for release by the Finance Department upon finalization of the approval of the special use permits and the issuance of site development permits. Those are the permits for clearing, grading, and construction of road and stormwater facilities. Lastly, in the funding release section, there's an item 4. It provides that the released funding shall not be used for clearing, grading, or other site development activities that physically alter site conditions until all required special use permits, including resolution of appeals and required site development permits, have been issued, except for those activities that are otherwise permit exempt. So there are certain activities that you can do on a site without a site development permit that alter the landscape. Clearing for survey work, soil test pits, those types of things, those are permitted and exempt from a site development permit. Item 4 provides that in the event of an appeal of a required special use permit, the Finance Department may continue to release funds to continue permitting, engineering, and other pre-development activities that do not alter site conditions when it's determined that these activities are critical to maintaining the project schedule. And then lastly, Section C within this exhibit provides for periodic status reporting on a quarterly basis, with the first report to be given July 1, 2023. This report is to provide information on the status and amounts of funding that have been released for the Micro Home Village project. So that is the summary of the amendment memo, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. I'll start with some questions to clarify for council and those listening. The requirement to have a funding agreement, typically put together by the Finance Department in partnership with whoever we're funding for any purpose, is very normal and customary, and in fact required. There's nothing unusual about requiring a funding agreement, correct?
That is correct. A funding agreement would be required for any recipient receiving or partner receiving funding from the county. There would be some form of an agreement that would be executed.
We're not treating.
No, this is not a unique requirement for this project. A funding agreement was contemplated for this project without this direction for the amendment memo.
And some of the items in A and B are some of the core principles as you briefed, and some of the initial and required elements council would be looking for. There very well may be other elements that the finance department must put in a funding agreement in order to comply with state, federal, local law, auditing requirements, et cetera. So this is not meant to convey an exhaustive list of what goes into this or any other funding agreement.
That's correct. This is a list of the minimum expectations for the council, but as you pointed out, the agreement itself will contain a number of other conditions determined by the finance department to ensure compliance with relevant local, state, and federal law.
And the finance department works closely with the prosecuting attorney's office on any and all agreements.
That's correct.
Thank you. Vice Chair Campbell.
Thank you, Chair. One of the amendments is serving individuals with incomes at or below 65% of the area median income for Pierce County. Could you remind me what AMI is approximately?
Yeah. It's going to depend on household size, but
Yeah, so for Councilmember Campbell, for a single person in Pierce County, the most recent figures we have for 65% of the area median income is about $46,000 per year.
And, okay. And the 46 is the 65 mark? Is that right?
Yeah, so the percentage of area median income is associated with an income figure. So for 65% area median income in Pierce County, that would be income of up to $46,000 per year.
Okay. And I apologize, I wasn't here last week to ask a lot of these questions. Do we have department staff on the Zoom call?
I assume you're referring to human services staff?
No, I think it lists Mr. Oban as department staff on this. No? Okay. Then I'll hold my questions. I would have thought we'd have department staff here for this morning. So, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Denson.
Chair, one of my questions had to do with the 65% of AMI as well. Ms. Merrick?
I distracted the chair.
Thank you, Chair. One of my questions also had to do with the 65% target for area median income. Ms. Merritt, could you give any commentary in regards to what the typical target for AMI is for chronic homeless programs and projects? Is it 65%? That seems a little high to me.
Councilmember Denson, so typically in permanent supportive housing or projects serving chronically homeless, the AMI is 0 to 30% area median income. I think what we've heard from the executive's office in response to the 65% AMI that's listed in this proposal is that when Human Services Department in the county contracts on any affordable housing project, even if it's permanent supportive housing, the agreement they have is that it's 65% area median income. So I think that's where that figure is coming from. But when you look at what projects are serving chronically homeless, it's normally permanent supportive housing, and it's a 0 to 30% area median income.
Right, because I was under the impression that this project was going to target kind of the hardest to serve street homeless folks, and I think that's what the public is expecting, is to see a reduction in folks that are living on the streets of Pierce County. So question about that. My other question had to do with Exhibit A, subsection 4. If the timelines, and I just want clarification on this, if the timelines aren't met, it's the finance department's sole authority to determine whether the contract is terminated or reviewed, or does that come back before council?
So other than the September 1 date that is referenced under A1, the other dates are subject to review by the finance department, and it's their determination,
Okay,
that department's determination.
thank you, Mr. Taylor.
Thank you. I just remind council and the public that We have until, I'll remind council and the public that we have until December 31st, 2024 to contract and obligate all American Rescue Plan Act dollars. And looking for, much of our attention is on homelessness and affordable housing. So we're looking for some really great projects here. Councilmember Campbell, Vice Chair Campbell.
Thank you, Chair. And as you all know, I get numbers, and I really love to look into numbers and see what they look like. And this is really kind of an astonishing thing when we're looking at 65% AMI, with that being at 46%. And the all-knowing Google tells me that current Social Security benefit for a retired senior on Social Security is $44,000. So what we're saying by adopting these codes is that anyone on Social Security is at risk of homelessness because of housing in this county. That we need to bring this village in because everyone who only has Social Security is at risk and is eligible for this, because the standard by which we see people at risk of chronic homelessness is at a rate higher than the current national Social Security benefit. We've definitely got some big problems in this county we've got to work on. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councilmember Coover.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate allowing me here today. I just was curious in looking at the change in the project being not project-specific. And do we know, or are there ideas of what the supportive services would be, or when it says substantially similar, what that means in comparison to where we have a plan now that's very specific? Is there something else that other projects that are being thought of or would fit into that? What would they need to do? Would they have the same kind of services on site that the current plan has? Is the similar thing described?
So the reference to substantially similar is intended to convey the notion that what the council received last October and then the updated information in March is a concept for a site that between now and the time that the permits are approved for a site, there could be some changes. And so that's what that's intended to reference, that it's intended just to make clear for the record that the council is not approving a specific site plan for a specific project, that there could be changes that occur. That's what the attempt to convey that to the council and the public is with that language.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Vice Chair Campbell.
Sorry, Chair, and thank you. And again, I apologize for missing last week and still trying to wrap my head around these numbers. The individuals with incomes at or below 65% of the area median income for Pierce County, do we have an idea as to what percentage of the population that would be? Is that and can we find that out?
We could certainly find out what percentage of the households in Pierce County are at or below that 65% AMI, or approximately based upon
that
census,
would work.
based upon census data, if that's what you're seeking.
Yes.
Okay.
Because my thought is that's probably tens of thousands, and we're opening up 300 units. So,
Right.
okay. But yeah, if we can get that information. That's all for now, Chair.
Thank you. Councilmember Morell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Appreciate the questions that are being asked, but just we may not know the answer to this. I'm just throwing it out there. I would assume the contract that the executive and the finance and everybody who gets together to deal with this, do they specify a certain population that they are attempting to house within this village?
The intent of this funding release is for a project that serves chronically homeless.
And is there a definition of chronically homeless and an AMI, starting? I mean, you had mentioned 0 to 30.
Right.
And so that's the assumption that we're working on is even though it's up to 165,
65, not 165.
excuse me, 65 and below, this project is for 0 to 30.
I haven't seen any language that specifies 0 to 30, but what we've heard from the Tacoma Rescue Mission when they've been presenting and in their proposal, they're seeking people that they would exceed HUD's definition of chronic homelessness, which I think is up to a year of homelessness. They're looking for people that they've indicated that have been homeless for 10 to 20 years. So in terms of language in the contract, I haven't seen anything that specifies 0 to 30%, but in their proposal and what they've indicated numerous times in front of council is they're seeking people that are 10 to 20 years of chronic homelessness.
Okay, great. I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilmember Denson.
Yes, thank you, Chair. We've received so many different versions and documents related to this, so I'm not seeing it in here, but did I read somewhere that the priority will be to serve folks that have housing vouchers, like HUD housing vouchers already?
So Councilmember Denson, they are working with the Pierce County Housing Authority to have vouchers dedicated to the project, and the vouchers that they're looking to receive are housing choice vouchers. So those are vouchers that would go to an individual. So I think throughout that process, then people with a voucher would be prioritized. But I haven't seen language that says that they are intentionally prioritizing individuals with a voucher.
Okay, thank you. I've read it somewhere, but it may have been in a letter or other comments, so thank you.
And I should mention, too, they're also working with the VA on the veterans vouchers as well, so the VASH vouchers.
Thank you. I just wanted to note that the many specific dates, funding amounts, and some of the qualifications that we've been inquiring about this morning, like the area median income eligibility, but all the other dates and funding amounts come as recommendations by the county executive's office. So that's what highly informs this amendment, and wanted members to be able to understand that. I think this amendment strikes the best balance to support the building of a village to best support those experiencing chronic homelessness while protecting significant public investment and making sure that we can put these dollars to the best use within the guidelines and timelines given to us by the federal government. So there's a lot of detail in here as we're hearing the inquiry this morning, and very much appreciate members really making sure we understand what's in this amendment to inform the funding agreement. I'm not seeing any other hands, so the motion in front of us is adoption of Committee Amendment Number 1 to Proposal Resolution 2022-163. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The motion is adopted. That brings us to a public hearing on proposal number R 2022-163 as amended. Is there anyone in chambers wishing to provide comment on this? Seeing none, Ms. Persons, anyone online?
For any member of the public wishing to make public comment, press the raise hand icon in Zoom or *9 on your telephone keypad. And first, we have Melody.
Hi, thank you. I'm just trying to understand, I missed the beginning. So the amendment to 163, that's what I'm hearing you say, about funding the microhome village. Am I to understand what you're saying is that the release of funding for the microhome village is not project specific, like it's not funding the Pierce County Village that we've all been talking about forever? Explain that again to me so I can understand what the amendment is.
Can you pause the time, please? Melody, I'm going to ask you, this is not a back and forth. I will have staff answer appropriate questions that come up from the public. I don't want to waste your time in a back and forth, so I'm going to have you finish your 3 minutes of public comment now. So any other comments you have, any other questions you have, please do it now. When we conclude the public hearing, we'll answer appropriate questions. So please continue.
I think that's my main question that I would like answered. Thank you. I'll make my other comments tomorrow, but I'm trying to understand what this amendment means for the Pierce County Village behind us, what you are going to be voting on tomorrow.
Thank you for the questions.
And next, we have caller ending in 075.
This is Roxy Giddings. Thanks for taking my call. I was gobsmacked at $750,000 already into this development, and after listening to the other things that have been said to the council about this, I am very concerned. Like 200 people saying we don't want it there, but it doesn't say that you can't put it in where it will drastically affect a wetlands that is trying to be preserved and should be preserved. And so I want us to use ARPA funds to help people, even chronically homeless people. But I don't like playing games with zoning and environmental impacts. And I just, when you hire people that want to give you the answers that you want, then you get the answers that you want. And everybody wants this village, but we don't want it there. And so to say that it's a good thing that you put in the amendment, because it should go to any village. And we did not hear anything about 2 other places where they've spent $750,000 to find out whether they could put it there or not. And so I think we have a lot to go yet. But I'm ambivalent about this thing. Thank you.
Thank you.
No other hands.
Thank you. We'll close the public hearing and bring it back to council. Excuse me?
We had one more person raise their hand.
Go ahead.
George.
Good morning, members of the committee, Mr. Chair. My name is George Wern. I am not clear on what the amendment is. I just joined in, but it appears to me that you're framing this as a non-project action when it's very obviously a project-specific action is not credible. All the series of meetings leading up to this, the timeline, everything suggests that you got to get this done this week or else the funding, everything that you're meeting the applicant's timeline or he'll lose funding. This really is not, it's clearly directed toward a single project with everything expedited with that as the goal. And I think that's unfortunate that you're handling this in this manner. I don't think it's appropriate. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. Any other hands? Any other hands?
And then we have A. Shtick.
Hi, Council. Thank you for letting me speak. My name is Angela Schick. I just want to raise the concern about 2024-74 in regards to this project. They had two other properties that they were supposed to bring you, and while you minimize the criteria, you maximize the criteria and gave them more criteria to take away from those property selections. The property selected for this project, if we're in those guidelines, would have ex-nayed this property too, which I don't understand how this property can fit when no other property could fit. Along with the amount of houses that have been increased in the project, council asked for 150 houses, and somehow this project has grown substantially to over 250 with volunteer homes and other facilities as well. That substantially increases the operating budget and costs for building the project as well. One question I did have was, at the very beginning, I think there was a comment on the full build-out and the cost of the full build-out of the proposal. I heard a number of 150 billion. I just wanted to make sure I clearly understood that as well. So that is the question that I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other hands? Last call, any other hands? Seeing none, we're going to close the public hearing, bring it back to the committee. Mr. Taylor, I'm going to ask you to assist in answering some of the questions that we heard.
All right. So in regard to the release of the funding and whether or not it's project-specific, the proviso in the budget required a proposal be provided, one or more proposals be provided to the council regarding the development of a microhome village site, and that information was received. It was submitted in October and then supplemented in March. The action by the council on this resolution is simply the release of the funding for microhome village projects. I believe it's the council's expectation that a project that's developed is going to be similar to what the Pierce County Village contained in terms of number of units, mix of units, types of facilities, environmental protection, et cetera. But this resolution itself does not approve a specific site design for a project. So that's, I hope, clarifies and answers that question, but I'm happy to stand by and provide additional information for the council members if needed in that regard.
Councilmember Morell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This council has always provided a line item in ARPA funding for this particular project. So originally it was $22 million. So that from day one has always been the goal, is to develop a microhome village. So we haven't changed what we appropriated a year and a half ago or 2 years ago.
That's correct. That hasn't changed. The appropriation is still for one or, if you read the language in the appropriation, I think it says one or more microhome villages. But the intent is that it's for microhome village development.
And that's what we're releasing the funds for.
That is correct. That is correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? I'm not seeing any. I can take an oral vote. No, I need a motion first, and then.
You started with a motion.
Is there a motion to forward this to the full council?
Oh. That wasn't the motion. Yes. Could we do, Dave?
Councilmember Morell?
Could we do no recommendation on this?
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that we roll all amendments into a substitute resolution and forward it to the full council with no recommendation.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded to roll all amendments into a substitute and advance R 2022-163 to the full council with no recommendation. The date of the final council hearing on this is set for tomorrow, Tuesday, March 21st. I can take a voice vote on this.
Yes.
All, seeing no other hands, are there any other hands? Any other discussion on that motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The motion is adopted. That brings us to item number 8, proposal number R 2023-28. Vice Chair Campbell for a motion.
Actually, let's introduce it, and then we'll do the motion at the end.
Apologies. Madam Clerk, will you please read into the record?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Is my microphone on? Proposal number R 2023-28.
Not getting picked up.
It didn't pick up?
There we go.
Okay. I'll start again. Proposal number R 2023-28, a resolution of the Pierce County Council authorizing the county executive to enter into a one-year contract for publishing legal notices for Pierce County.
Thank you, Ms. Long.
Thank you and good morning. You see this every year, so it should be nothing new to you, but this is a proposal that would authorize the execution of a one-year contract between the county and, in this case, the News Tribune for publication of legal notices for the county. State law provides that at its first meeting in April, the council shall contract with a legal newspaper to serve as the official county newspaper for the term of 1 year beginning on July 1st. The statute further provides that the contract shall be awarded to the best and lowest responsible bidder, giving consideration to the question of circulation and awarding the contract with a view to giving publication of notice the widest publicity. That said, Pierce County Code provides for purchases where a special market condition exists to be directly negotiated. So in this case, the News Tribune is the only qualified legal newspaper in the county that has sufficient circulation and will publish greater than once a week. So direct negotiations proceeded under the authority of Pierce County Code Section 2-106060 for services as the official county newspaper. The contract is for a maximum of $135,000. That's the total fiscal impact. And just to note that the News Tribune does publish Monday through Friday and Sunday and does guarantee, and you'll see this in the supportive documentation, does guarantee a circulation of 48,000 daily and 99,000 on Sundays. This is scheduled for final consideration on April 4th, and I'll note that Mr. Opitz is here from the Finance Department if you have specific questions.
Thank you. Questions for Ms. Long or Mr. Opitz before we open this up for a public hearing? Councilmember Hitchin?
Thank you, Chair. I can't remember if I asked this question last year, but are they also published in the digital edition?
Yes, I believe you are.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councilmember Morell?
And Councilmember Hitchin asked my question. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Chair Campbell?
The requirement that it needs to be more than weekly, more often than weekly, is that state requirement or our requirement?
No, that's the county's preference.
Okay. And we got their circulation number. I assume that's their print number, 4899. And not this time, but into the future, we should probably evaluate digital subscription and digital reach going forward, or perhaps change our code to start looking at some of that, because there could be a time in the future where we don't have a daily newspaper in this county, and that wouldn't reach our basic thing, so we need to make sure that digital is considered. So maybe after we pass this, we look at some, bring this back for some refiguring for how we calculate going into the future. With that, I will support this before.
Thank you. Councilmember Krueger?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to comment, since it's a local paper that is being changed, I just wanted to note that I went to pick up a Sunday paper at the store and they don't carry it anymore. So they're not being delivered, the TNT. So just as a point of interest. They may have home delivery, but not to the places of business. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Seeing no other hands, let's open this up for a public hearing. Is there anyone in chambers wishing to provide comment on 2023-28? I'm not seeing any. Ms. Persons, anyone online?
For any member of the public wishing to make public comment, press the raise hand icon in Zoom or *9 on your telephone keypad. And first, we have caller ending in 075.
This is Roxy Giddings. Thank you for taking my call. My question was, what happens when the paper closes? I've heard a rumor that it'll be less than a year from now that we will have only e-editions, of which I do not read. I would heartily request that we keep in mind that there are people who still read and not online. And so I would like, I don't want to take the paper on the telephone like I do with these. I can't go to a Zoom meeting if there's, or I can't go down to an original meeting like I could if I was going to a council meeting. You actually have people there. The paper doesn't do that, and it'll be just an e-edition. And so, anyway, I'd like to tell you that the paper is delivered on Sunday to me. However, my paper man is a man of color, and he does not go out with the papers after dark. So instead of getting a morning paper, I get an afternoon and evening paper every day because I'm the last person on his double route that he has, and he is afraid to deliver the papers after dark. And we all know the reason, and I just like to throw that out there. But I do get the paper on Sunday, even if it is an afternoon paper. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And next, we have A.
Hi, Council. Thank you again for the period to comment. I just wanted to inquire and put into your thoughts if it's not part of the subscription, or if you can exempt the subscription-based articles that go out from this. Most of the articles you have to be a subscription, and I think that is very for online-based notifications from the government and public comments and public hearings. I think it would be more equitable and provide better feedback from the public if those articles were provided free to the public, and put some type of requirement for the News Tribune to publish those on their online platform free to the public. That's all I have.
Thank you. Seeing no other hands, we'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the committee. Vice Chair Campbell for a motion.
I will, sorry, before I make the motion, I will acknowledge the comments, go ahead and move this forward, but a couple of comments I may want to look at for possible amendments before we get to final. I would make a motion to forward proposal number R 2023-28 to the full council with a do pass recommendation.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded to advance proposal number R 2023-28 to the full council with a due pass recommendation. Apologize for not pausing to see if there were any other comments by members. Are there any before we take a final vote? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. The motion is adopted. Councilmember Cruver, your light is up.
Thank you, Chair. I just was curious if perhaps at the libraries, the subscriptions might be accessible free to the public.
Department staff is listening, so I'm sure they'll take that back. Is there any other business by committee members this morning? Not seeing any. Ms. Long, any other business this morning for the Rules and Operations Committee?
Not this morning, thank you.
Not seeing any. We will stand adjourned, and we're going to take just a 5-minute recess. So, we're going to start our Monday study session at 11:05 this morning. We're adjourned.